Welcome, everybody. This is Fridays Live, a part of Findmypast from home, a free family history series designed just for you, for lovers of family history, of researching, and of the past in general. We all come together here at the end of each week to celebrate our successes and, of course, to help each other out. This week, I have a fantastic hour of family history goodness lined up for you. We are going to look at Findmypast's new records. It's the hot goss for what's new at Findmypast this week, and we are the only family history website to add new records every week. We're also going to be doing question of the week, and that is a chance for you guys to share your stories. And the question of the week this week is, have you learned what your ancestor was like as a child or about their school days? What did you discover? That is the question of the week this week. Then we're going to have a look. We're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to take a look at one of your brick walls. And not only am I going to be doing the work, but hopefully you are going to help as well. We're going to try and crowdsource some help for one of our lovely community members. And if you like this sort of thing, we might do this on a slightly more regular basis. Plus, it is also Pride Month this June, and we will be celebrating by touching on some stories and insights that we found in the 1921 census, because of course, every story matters. So a very warm welcome to you all, whether this is your first time here or your 50th, everybody is welcome. So please let me know where you're joining from, what the weather's like with you, and of course, what you've been researching this week. If this is your first time, my name is Ellie. I work in the social media team at Findmypast. It is a job I absolutely love. It means I get to do things like this quite regularly, and I like that very much. I get to talk to all of you. Please say hello to Daisy in the comments, my colleague, my very, very talented brand researcher and copywriter. Say hello to her. She's going to be joining in the conversation with you today after a very long week. You've been working on some pretty good stuff this week, Daisy, and I can't even talk about what it is yet, but she's been working on something very exciting. In other news here in Edinburgh, the weather has turned around for the better, so I'm quite happy, although I am now in my little boxy office and not able to see the sunshine, but never mind, it's worth it because I'm here with all of you. And on a totally different note, I don't know if anybody uses fountain pens. I absolutely love fountain pens. This one was actually a gift from my colleagues. I think this was my birthday, actually. They actually bought me this lovely pen. And I was changing the ink cartridge on it yesterday and left it to do its thing. And then this morning it exploded all over my hand and I can't get it off. So never mind. Let's welcome some of you that are here today. I can see lots of people joining, which is lovely. We've got Roz joining us from a cool and rainy Massachusetts. Gina saying it's sunny but windy in Lincolnshire. Yeah, it's the same here in Edinburgh, actually. It's pretty breezy. If it wasn't for the wind, it would actually be a very lovely summer's day. Jean joining us from Preston. Andrea from sunny but windy Stoke-on-Trent. This is going to be a theme. Janet from a sunny Wales. Yes, please say hello to my lovely native North Wales for me, Janet. We've got Kim joining us from a sunny West Yorkshire. Joe joining us from Thirsk. Hello. So many of you here. This is lovely. Matthew joining us saying he's watching on YouTube as a video. Is it showing up on Facebook? Oh, Facebook. Why is it every week that it insists on being so silly? I don't know. Fantastic. Okay. Sue says, afternoon, friends from a sunny Guildford in Surrey. Went down a Stimpson rabbit hole during Who Do You Think You Are last night. Had no connection. Oh, that's such a shame. But I'm sure it was an enjoyable trip down the rabbit hole nonetheless. Ellen saying, sunny here in Roscoe, no more smoke haze. Yes, we've been following that on the news here. It looks quite alarming. Not just for, obviously, you guys in the States with the smoke blur in the sky, but also must be quite terrifying for our Canadian friends as well with the wildfires. So please all stay safe. Okie doke. Andrew saying, never pinch other people's pens, they always leak in your pocket. No, that's actually my pen, Andrew. Although I don't know whether I should share this. I don't know whether you'll think less of me, but this pen here is my favorite pen. Okay, this is my favorite fountain pen. And when we did the Live at the Savoy event in September, I lent this to Niall, and Niall lost it. And I was distraught. I'm not even joking. I wasn't crying or anything, but I was very panicky that he had lost my favorite pen, and I don't think he quite understood. Because when you find a nice pen, you want to keep hold of said pen, don't you? And this is why I never lend pens out normally, because I know that I will either not get them back or they will get lost. But anyway, he did eventually find it and gave it back to me just before he got on it on the plane. And then because of that, my colleagues then clubbed together and bought me this for my birthday. There we go. Shall we talk about some family history now? I wonder if an obsession with stationery runs in the family. I don't know whether I've shown you this, actually. This is sort of family history related. Last time I was in Wales, I was gifted this, which is my grandfather's Parker pen that I think he was given on his, I want to say his 21st birthday by his parents. And although it's quite special, I'm not sure he actually used it much because there's not a lot of sign of wear. There's a little bit of ink on there, but I haven't used it yet. I've still to find the correct ink cartridges for it. Now we really will do some family history. Let's have a look at some new records, shall we? Okay, so got a lot to get through this week, actually. Some good stuff for Yorkshire added if you've got Yorkshire ancestors. So we've added some more school records. We've added some military historical society bulletins, some Yorkshire baptisms, and then just over 107,000 new newspaper pages. For the National School Records and Logbooks, so these have come from the Calderdale Family History Society this week. So there's just shy of 10,000 new records, and it's very exciting actually because this marks the end of Calderdale's 4-year volunteer transcription project. It's involved 41 volunteers, 52 schools, and has resulted in 127,000 plus records. It's a really amazing achievement. These records are now more accessible than ever, and they are preserved for future generations thanks to the hard work of these volunteers. If you are interested in being part of future projects or joining their society, please do head over to their website. And it might also be a good chance for you to think, I'm not a part of my local family history society, maybe I should be. I think everybody should support their local family history societies because they do such fantastic work. Cool. So yes, so these just under 10,000 new records are for Halifax in Yorkshire, of course. And here is just one of the records that the volunteers have transcribed. This is for a chap called Jeffrey Ashton, and we get so much detail from just this one transcript. Excuse me. Thanks to the work of the volunteers, we learn his birth date, which was 3rd of October 1914, his admission date of 24th of April 1922 into Halifax St Mary's Catholic Mixed School. We get his father's name of James Edwin Ashton, their address of 5 Stafford Place, and his previous school and leaving date from this school of 23rd of July 1926. And we even learn that Jeffrey had a scholarship to attend secondary school. So you've got this one record, you've got bags of detail here. I wonder what else we can find using this one record. And spoiler alert, we can. So using the address and his father's name, we can easily find them in the 1921 census. So we learn that James was born in 1882 in Lancaster. He was a cashier for a brass company. Jeffrey's mother was Ethel. She was born in 1887, also in Lancaster. And it also appears by this point, Jeffrey appears to have no siblings. And then if we skip ahead to the 1939 register, we find Jeffrey still living in Halifax and married to Phyllis. She works rolling toffee, and I just think that sounds like a great job, and I would just be wanting to try it all the time, but I suppose I'd probably get told off for that. Jeffrey is a laboratory assistant and he works in the dyeing industry. I did also find him in the newspapers in 1926, and that was the announcement of his scholarship. So I'm really interested to know, have you ever come across an ancestor in the school records? Maybe the hard work of the Calderdale Family History Society's volunteers has paid off. Maybe it's inspired you to go and have a look. Maybe even there's a project that you can help with at some point. So yes, those are the school records. Thank you very much, Calderdale. Thank you very much to all family history societies and all volunteers. You do amazing work. Thank you. Okay, let's move on. So we've then got the Military Historical Society bulletins. So these are PDF records. They've been scanned and are now fully searchable by name and issue. You can use the text search as well for each bulletin. And they're very, very varied records. So you've got about 1,200 of them, and they can help you learn more about a particular regiment and its history, things like uniforms, insignia, badges. For example, if you have a photo of your ancestor, but you're not sure what regiment they served in, you can use these records and other ones similar to it to try and look at the clues in the photograph and try and work out what regiment they were in. So very, very handy. This is just one snippet of a particular page. There's actually a lot more detail on this page than just the photograph, but this is a photograph. It's of a lady called Rose West. She was a bandswoman in the Volunteer Training Corps. And the detail that you get about her is absolutely brilliant. It tells us that she was one of the first women to join and to wear the uniform. They even had to arrange a skirt for her. It gives actually her full name, which was Rose Emma Elizabeth West, and that she was born in 1898 in Northampton. It gives me her father's name, William. It tells me that he worked in the local shoe trade and that he was also a well-known bandmaster. She had a brother called William who joined the Grenadier Guards, and it also very, very sweetly says that William taught both Rose and her brother how to play the cornet. So thanks for that detail. I found her in the 1911 census with her family. I also think I found her in the 1921 census. I shouldn't have moved slides. Found her in the 1921 census with her widowed mother, Emma. And if this is her, she was working as a cinema pianist. And we even get the name of the cinema because the 1921 census includes the names of your employer and also your place of work. So it tells me this is the Majestic Cinema Company Limited on Gold Street in Northampton. And did I look for a photo of it? Yes, I did. And this is it. It was founded as a music hall in 1863, and Charlie Chaplin once performed there, did you know? In 1912, it became a full-time cinema, and it closed in 1937 before being demolished in 1950. Newspapers, when I had a look as well, also told me that Rose studied music at the National College of Music in London. She may have married a chap called James Chapman in 1925 and died in 1990, but I haven't been able to verify this. It could be her. I don't know. Daisy says there were 196 cinema pianists in 1921. There you go. If you want to go down a rabbit hole and look at cinema pianists, there you go. The world is your oyster. I can't do that now because I'm talking to you about this. Okay, I'll do it later. Thank you, Daisy, for that. So Yorkshire baptisms. This is the last record release of the week, and these are for two churches in Sheffield, All Saints and Brightside. You've got just over 23,000 new records, which cover the years 1869 to 1923. There are now over 9 million records in this collection. It's huge. And you get transcript and image as well, which, as we all know, is a winner. I have Yorkshire roots, so my ancestors appear in these records a lot. This is the record for my first Yorkshire ancestor. Would you say first or last? Because he moved to Lancashire, but he was born in Yorkshire. Probably my first. We'll go with first. So yes, he was born Charles Dobb. He later added an S, so he became Charles Dobbs, which of course makes it somewhat a little bit tricky to trace him in records. Thank you for that. Yes, he's my great-grandfather. He was baptised in 1875, and his parents were Henry Dobb and Sarah Rich. Using these records, I've actually been able to trace my Yorkshire ancestors back many decades. I have been able to uncover new surnames. I really love finding new surnames to add to the family tree because they're just new lines of inquiry to follow. So I've also added surnames like Carr, Field, Barlow, Hollingsworth, Earnshaw, Carrington, Turnhill, and Unwin. So yeah, there you go. I don't know if anybody's going to be interested, but I thought I would just pop in a little pedigree chart of my Yorkshire ancestors there. So starting with Charles and then working back. As you can see, I haven't yet figured out who the parents of Mary Field were, but that's on my list of things to do. Now, for newspapers, there are over 107,000 new pages this week for you guys to explore. We've got one new title, which is the Selby Times, and this is for various year ranges starting in 1869 and running up to 1916, so a good spread there for you. And we've also got updates to a further 15 lots to explore there for you as well. In particular, the Edinburgh Evening News, we've been adding an awful lot to that recently. Yeah, have at it, but maybe at 5 o'clock, maybe wait until I finished and then you can go and explore. Or if you can multitask, you can do the same, you can do them both at once, that's fine. Okay, let's move on to question of the week. Here we go. So the question of the week is, have you learned about what your ancestor was like as a child or about their school days? What did you discover? This is what I want to hear from you this week. For example, have you found them in the school records? What did you find? Did you discover that they were absent for a time because of, I don't know, illness, for example? Did you discover that, I think I found, these aren't my direct overthrow ancestors, but they are overthrow relatives. These were overthrows who moved to the Luton area. And I did find that one of my overthrow ancestors was brought to court because they weren't sending the children to school, that was a no-no. You had to send your children to school. So I can't remember whether it was the mother or the father, but yes, they were taken to court. But yeah, that's what I want to hear this week. Okay, Daisy is starring all your answers for me, so I can easily find them. Thank you very much. Okay, so Karen says, my grandma was one of 13 children. I found Manchester school records for about 6 of them, and from the age of 4 or 5 until around 14 years old. It was a great find because I was able to add birth dates to some of the children and cross-reference census addresses. This is what's so great about the school records. They are very detail rich, actually, and especially for the ones that include original images, you can pull out even more information as well. Particularly, I'm not just talking like admissions registers, but I'm also talking about the teachers' logbooks. There was a particularly good one that the volunteers at Calderdale came across, and it was about this. I don't want to spoil too much because I'm going to set this as a challenge for you guys in a couple of weeks to see if you can find out more information with a prize, I should add. So there was this headmaster who wrote in his logbook bemoaning that none of the children had turned up to school that day, but it was because there was a big local event on. And he was so funny reading it because he's almost like, none of my children turned up, grr, but also this is a happy local event, so I suppose I should be happy. But yeah, it really amused me. But yeah, keep an eye out for that challenge because I want to see what you guys can find out about this event from not a lot of information. But I have no doubt that you guys will rise to the challenge, and I know that you're going to find it. I know you're going to sort it out. Andrew says, my mum's granddad was sentenced to 14 days in 1882 when he was 11. Goodness gracious me. That's very, very young indeed. Kim says, my paternal grandfather was a bit of a troublemaker as a child, a trait he inherited from his wayward father and which carried on until he was an old man. I do feel like that troublemaker cheekiness can sometimes run in the family a little bit. My grandmother has a cracking sense of humour. Some might say inappropriate sense of humour. I wouldn't say it's inappropriate. I think she's hilarious. And I never met her father, my great grandfather. He died, I think, a few years before I was born. But she always says to me that he was a character. He loved a joke. He loved a laugh. And then I heard like my husband telling me about his grandfather, who he died just before we started seeing each other, so I never met him. But he was a bit of a practical joker and used to leave whoopee cushions and things like that. So it's very sweet when you hear those sorts of stories. Daphne says a few in Wiltshire and Norfolk were absent during haymaking. I don't blame them, actually, Daphne, because that would have been a lot of work. But it's sort of 6 of one and half a dozen of the other, isn't it? Because the children would have been required to help out the effort for things like the harvest and things like that. But at the same time, they're missing out on their education. So yeah, it's a hard one. Gina says, my great-grandfather was mentioned in the newspapers for not having the children inoculated. Actually, yeah, I found a similar one with my family as well. Tisk, in my opinion. Andrew says, I found a Pembrokeshire logbook bemoaning poor attendance due to potato season. This is it. These logbooks are fascinating, and it gives us a real insight into what schooling and education was like 100 years ago and even beyond that. Yeah, really, really, truly fascinating. Karen says, I just found 2 school photos of my grandpa in sports teams. Today went to the Haringey archives and found his admission records and school magazine reports. He saved the day in a football match. Oh, that's wonderful, Karen. I love this. And you just found these today. I'm so, ow, just pulled something in my shoulder. I was that happy for you. I'm very happy for you. That's really, really lovely. Okay, let us move on then. Keep those coming in if you've got any more. I do have spotted a couple more actually. Jean says, not from school records, but from censuses. My 2 times great-grandfather's son was aged 13 and daughter 12 in the 1851 census, and they were working alongside their father as fustian cutters. There were 12 children in all, and 2 died in infancy, but the rest of the children looked to have started working life. One of the girls from this family married a farmer gardener. I remember visiting their 2 daughters and son in the 50s with my mum, who always called them cousins. I'm afraid it doesn't let me see the rest of it. But yes, that's they did start them working young, didn't they? I'm pretty sure my grandfather said himself that he finished school at 14, I think. I think he was 14. Janet says, searching for boys in a junior school football team 1919 to 1920. Can't find this school's particular records, but found their infant school. Turns out the 2 boys are distantly related to me. That's quite cool. Gordon says, my 2 times great-grandfather went to Mr. Brown's Academy, and I have found some pieces of his writing skills. Oh, I love that. As you can tell, somebody who likes pens also does like handwriting. That's really special, Gordon. I love that. Actually, that was the name of my grandfather, Gordon. And Eileen says, my grandfather was at school in a rural village near the military town of Aldershot. I was able to learn more about what life was like at the time by reading the schoolmaster's logbook. Yes, we love the logbooks. Some of the older children only came to school for the morning sessions, being collected by parents who needed them back to help with the farm work. On the days when the snow lay on the ground frequently in the winter, attendance was very low, as the children walked up to 3 miles to get to school. 3 miles. That's a lot. That's a lot. Oh, we've got more coming through. Continuation. Thank you, Jean. We've always called them cousins, but in fact, they were my first cousins, 2 times removed, and my maternal grandmother's cousins. They gave me some velvet pieces, which they said came from where their mother worked. Oh, and you made a cushion out of it. There's a beautiful feel to it and something tangible that I can relate to my 2 times great-grandmother and grandfather and my great-grandmother. Oh, that's lovely. I love your stories, everybody. Sarah says, I have a little pocket diary of my father's written during the Second World War whilst in boarding school in Wexford. Lots of exciting entries of plane spotting. I can imagine, yes. I don't have it personally. I've talked about this before, but there is a diary that my grandfather kept while he was away at war, and I think my uncle has it. I think I just need to convince him to give it to me because it's more, yeah, I think I should have it. But we do have a blog about that with some pictures in it if you're interested. Wonderful. Oh, another one from Eileen. Also, the schoolmaster wrote, very poor attendance, older children absence, suspected to be watching the army exercises on the common. That's quite sweet. But it's amazing how many insights you can glean from these, you know, just from these incredible records. So yes. Okay, so what we're going to do is move on now. Apologies, I was just checking my messages from my husband. I think he's locked himself out, but he's just going to go for a walk. So yes, so what we'll do is we will move on. I've got something a little bit different for you this week, everybody. So after a recent Findmypast from home session, we received a lovely message from a community member. I'm not sure if she's listening today. I really hope she is. From Belinda, who requested that we take a look at one of her brick walls. And I thought, I know we do these sessions with Jessamy from the National Archives, but excuse me just a second, everybody. He's gone for a walk. Okay, that's fine. So we do these sessions with Jessamy from the National Archives. But what I thought might be fun is if we take this brick wall and not just me look at it, but we all look at it and try and offer some advice. And basically, if you'd like to get involved, we're going to do this as a bit of a live crowdsourcing, okay? So I'll talk us through the brick wall. And if you can, open another window on your device, get Findmypast or MyHeritage or Ancestry, whichever website that you use, I don't mind. And add some links into the chat and we'll work away. We'll see what we can do. If you find anything, pop it into the chat, say where you found it and how you think it might help. Hopefully Belinda is here, so then she can answer any questions that we need clarifying. But if not, I'm sure she'll pick them up afterwards. So let's move on. This is the brick wall. So Belinda says, my great-grandmother, Dorothy May Barnes, was born around 1892. Her marriage certificate states that her father was Charles George Barnes, a commercial traveller. The 1921 census states that he was born in Kensington in London. Now, the GRO, the General Register Office, couldn't find a likely birth certificate for her, and a DNA expert found no DNA matches in my father's matches. Bit of a pickle. Okay, we've got that. Lovely. If you need anything clarifying at any point, anybody, please just ask and I'll do my best. But there is some further information that was provided as well. So Dorothy fell pregnant in 1917 and gave birth to Belinda's nana, Dorothy Cecilia Esther or Hester Barnes, in 1918 at 19 Argyle Place in St Pancras. And the father was reportedly killed in action before she was born. In 1919, she married a New Zealand soldier called Robert Charles Milligan. In 1920, they have another daughter called Mary Adelaide. And then in 1923, the family emigrated to New Zealand. Dorothy died there in 1940, and reportedly, she never spoke of her English family. And there was no mother recorded on her death certificate, just her father, Charles Barnes, commercial traveller. And Dorothy apparently named her daughters after people who stayed or owned 19 Argyle Street, which was apparently a boarding house. I've put Denise here, I meant Belinda. Tracked down the old owners, which were the Newsies, which is a great surname. And last little bit of information, DNA proved that Robert Charles Milligan was indeed Dorothy Cecilia's biological father. So the father was not killed in action prior to the birth. So there we go. Are you up for a challenge? Jo can see that she's on her phone. Don't worry, you don't have to take part at all. You can just listen to the rest of us. Don't worry at all. Okay. Right. I do have some more information for you, actually. So we've got, this is Dorothy Cecilia's birth certificate in 1918. We can see the address of 19 Argyle Street with no father. Her mother, Dorothy May Barnes, of no occupation. There's also a New Zealand address, which is 44 Mountain Street, Wellington, New Zealand. Now, I don't know whether this is indeed a reference to the fact that the father was from New Zealand. Belinda says she's looked up this address and apparently it doesn't exist, or at least it doesn't exist anymore. If you need me to go back to any of these slides at any point, just tell me. This is the marriage certificate of Robert Charles Milligan and Dorothy May Barnes, of the ages 24 and 26, bachelor and spinster. It says that Robert is a driver in the New Zealand Field Artillery and that he's based at the New Zealand Soldiers Club at Russell Square. His father was Samuel Milligan, a farm labourer. And as you can see here, Dorothy's address is 19 Argyle Street, and her father is listed as Charles George Barnes, a commercial traveller. I do just want to note the witnesses here as well. So we've got Ada Denham and Maud Esther Field. And then the last certificate is Mary Adelaide's one in 1920, which does denote Robert as the father. Again, we've got the address of 19 Argyle Street. He's a haberdasher at this point. So yeah, let's have a play. And while you guys are looking and typing away and searching away, there are a couple of things I looked at. I don't have anything conclusive, but I thought I wanted to have a look at the family who were at 19 Argyle Street and see if we can confirm about the Lucy family, see if there's any connections there. Maybe Dorothy was very, very closely affiliated with that family, particularly if she apparently named her daughters after members of the Lucy family, you know. So I wanted to explore that. And then the other thing I wanted to do is look at the witnesses to the marriage, because we love a bit of fan research, don't we? What was the mother of Dorothy Cecilia Esther Barnes' name? Let me just go back for you. There we go. This is Dorothy Cecilia Esther, and the mother's name is given as Dorothy May Barnes, of no occupation, of 44 Mountain Street, Wellington, New Zealand. But then it also says Dorothy May Barnes, mother, 19 Argyle Street, St Pancras. I don't know. So there we go. So yeah, I wanted to have a little look at, these are the Milligans in 1921, by the way. Could we go back to the question page, says Karen? Yes, we can. My great-grandmother, Dorothy May Barnes, was born circa 1892. Her marriage certificate states her father was Charles George Barnes, a commercial traveller. The 1921 census states she was born in Kensington in London, and the GRO could not find a likely birth certificate. In fact, if you go to search the civil birth records for Dorothy May Barnes, born 1892, just in London, not even put in Kensington, I think there's one matching one that comes up, and it's a birth in Lewisham district, and the mother's maiden name is Goodyear. And I had a very, very brief look at this one earlier, and I found the marriage of the parents, which was a year later than the birth. But I then couldn't find them in the 1911 census. But bearing in mind, I was doing this at, I don't know, 3:45. That's probably why I didn't get very far. Oh, we've got informants for death. Thank you, Gordon. That's handy. Hope and Kynaston. And this would have been in New Zealand as well. We've got one from Linda here, which is a 1901 census with a link to Ancestry. So, Belinda, take a look at this and let us know what you think. I'm just going to go back to my just want to go back to my slides for a second. So yeah, this is the family in 1921. You can see that Robert is listed as a draper and haberdasher, and you can indeed see that Dorothy has her birthplace listed as London, Kensington. And then the two girls were born in St Pancras. So yeah, Linda says Father Charles is a salesman for a draper's. That's really interesting, actually, Linda, because as we've just seen here, Robert is a draper and haberdasher, isn't he? And if you're, you know, I've got, I think I've got some ancestors who were sort of commercial travelers, drapers. They moved around a lot. So that is a possibility. We're going to have a little look at that one. I'm not going to have a look now because I'll have to get rid of the slides, I'm afraid, but I will certainly have a look afterwards. Thank you very, very much. I wanted to talk you through a little while you guys are still searching for the witnesses. Okay, I like looking at witnesses for marriages. So you've got Maud Esther Field. That's the married name of Maud Esther Lucy, and she married Charles Field in 1912. In 1921, you've also got her nephew Cyril Lucy living with them. I did wonder whether Maud might have been a relation of Dorothy's, but Maud's mother's maiden name was Rush. So I don't know if we need to go back further to find a connection or if there's just not one there. In 1911, Maud was a milliner and she was boarding at 9 Chesterfield Street in St Pancras, but there's no sign of Dorothy. I might be barking at the wrong tree here. I was really hoping that fan research would win out. There is also a James Vipond Elliot in that household, who is a commercial traveller and boarding, but the name is very, very different to what we have. So I decided not to pursue that. And this is actually because when I found the, hold on, I've lost my trail of thought. This is the Lucys in 1921 at 19 Argyle Street. And if you look up the address on our address search, you can see that there are several different results for them because it was a boarding house. So there's actually about 6 different returns to look at. So yeah, you've got Esther here, who was the wife. And I think that was who one of the daughters was named after. And then you've also got Celia. And again, that was one of the other middle names that was used. And I keep coming back to the fact that for Dorothy to have lived here for so long and to have named her daughters after the people who, the family who owned this place, I just feel that she would have had to have had quite a strong relationship with them. This is an interesting thought. Daphne says there were boarding schools specifically for the children of commercial travellers. I did not know this, and that is very interesting. I kind of want to pursue that line now. Ooh, interesting stuff, Daphne. Thank you very much. Oh, I've gone too far. Oh yes, this was just one more. This was the Milligans when they migrated in 1923. This was supposed to be further up. My apologies. But yes, you've got them here, and you've got that same address, 19 Argyle Street, and you've got Robert, a labourer. You've got his wife, she's just listed as Mrs., which is a bit frustrating. Child Dorothy, and the other child Mary. Excuse me. I did have a look at the other witness, Ada. There's one Ada Denham in the 1921 census in St Pancras. She was born in 1881. She has many children. She has a brother. But still, even if I go back to 1911 with Ada, I can't find any mention of a Dorothy. So yes. There we go then. I have seen instances of, when I've been doing research, not in my own family tree, but for different family trees, I've seen instances of people who do lie, or maybe they don't know that they're lying. Maybe they don't know that what they're saying isn't quite true. Maybe they've been told that themselves, about fathers on marriage certificates. And where I've seen it is where they themselves are maybe illegitimate or have something else that they want to hide, perhaps. So it's possible that Barnes is not her real name, or that Charles is not her father's first name, or that he was not even a commercial traveller. However, in my experience, and I'm not saying this is true across the board in any way, shape, or form, there is sometimes a grain of truth. Even if something is a lie, there's going to be something there that holds true. And I'm wondering that because Dorothy named her first child Dorothy, I suspect, but I don't know for certain, that was indeed her real first name. So yes, please continue looking. Let me know what you find. Matthew says that founder Dorothy M. Barnes, born in Hendon, but died in 1892, might be worth checking around that area. Yes, that's a good shout. Oh, interesting. Karen says, name Charles George Barnes, birthday 1870, death date 1952, in Tasmania. Could that be her father? Oh, Karen. I want to know now. I want to know. I knew crowdsourcing this out to you guys was a good shout. Interesting. Very interesting. Yes, keep looking away if you'd like to. Please keep sharing things, because it means that when Belinda comes back and watches this back, she'll have some stuff to have a look at. Also, if you like this sort of segment on Fridays Live, where we do a brick wall and we crowdsource it together, if it's something that you'd like to see again in the future, please let me know, and maybe you guys can give me some more, and we can spread them out a little bit. Okay, the last thing I wanted to look at this week is around Pride Month. And researching our LGBTQ ancestors and relatives, because June is Pride Month, and all across the world we celebrate the LGBTQ plus community. And some of you might ask, well, why? And I think it's because, for me, all stories matter. But frustratingly, because of bygone laws and attitudes, some of our LGBTQ friends, ancestors, and relatives have in the past been treated with suspicion and fear and derision, and that makes me really, really sad. So because of that, stories like these have often been hidden away from view. Okay, and I think every story should be celebrated. So today, this month, every day, I think we should celebrate these stories in addition to all of the other ones we already celebrate. So what I thought might be fun is for us to take a little bit of a trip into the 1921 census and look at a handful of such stories. And if you have any stories that you would like to share, I would love to hear them, particularly if you found them in census records or newspapers, anything like that at all. So I've got 3 different examples for you. And first of all, pictured on screen here, we have Radcliffe Hall and Una Trowbridge. So Radcliffe was a poet and an author, and she wrote the novel, amongst other novels, The Well of Loneliness. She had a rather long and very grand name, actually. She was Marguerite Antonia Radcliffe Hall. And in adulthood, she often went by the name John. She had relationships with women throughout her life, but in particular, she had a relationship with a singer called Mabel Batten, and then later she began a relationship with Mabel's cousin, Una Trowbridge, and Una was a sculptor. They began living together from 1917, and they would continue to do so for the rest of their lives. And in fact, here they are on the 1921 census. And what's particularly interesting here, they're listed as joint head of household. This is how Una filled out the 1921 census form for them. And you've got Una listed as a scientific research psychological, I think that says, because she was interested in that field as well. And yes, and then you've got Radcliffe Hall there as well. It's good stuff, isn't it? I love seeing things like this. And then we've got the next one here. I'm probably going to race through these. I'm probably going to end up finishing early, but never mind. So we've got Edith Craig, Christopher St. John, and Claire Atwood. So Edith Craig was a theatre director, producer, and costume designer, and of course, an early pioneer of the women's suffrage movement. And she was born in 1869. She was the daughter of an actress called Ellen Terry and an architect called Edward Godwin. And in fact, I did come across a fantastic photograph in our newspapers of Edith acting in costume on stage with her mother Ellen. It's a fantastic photo. I'll have to find it for you. So Edith lived with Christabel Marshall, who also went by the name Christopher St. John, from 1899, I think. And Christabel, or Christopher, was also a campaigner for women's suffrage and was a playwright and author. In 1916, they were joined at home by an artist called Claire or Tony Atwood, and the trio, yes, lived together until Edith's death in 1947. And what's very sweet is that Christopher and Claire are buried beside one another, but tragically, because Edith died first, when it came to bury her ashes near Christopher and Claire, Edith's ashes were lost in that movement. But there is now there's a memorial there for Edith in the same cemetery. And additionally, Claire was a very, very talented artist. Her paintings appear in the Tate, in the V&A, in the Imperial War Museum, and more besides. And then there's one more here for you. So you've got Edward Carpenter and George Merrill. And Edward was a poet and philosopher and an early gay rights activist. He also advocated for things like prison reform, and I can never say this properly, he was an anti-vivisectionist. Did I say that correctly? I hope I did. He was born in 1844 in Sussex. He studied at Cambridge. He entered the Church of England and was then invited to tutor the eldest sons of Edward VII, but he declined the position and it went to somebody else. He later left the church because apparently he was quite disappointed with the hypocrisy of Victorian society. He spent some time in India, and throughout his life, he did have romantic relationships with men. And then when he returned from India, he met a chap called George Merrill from Sheffield, a working class man, and the two were partners for the rest of their lives, and they lived together from about 1898. And their relationship actually inspired other literary figures such as E.M. Forster and D.H. Lawrence. George died in 1928 and Edward in 1929, some 13 months later. And when Edward died, he was interred in the same grave as George, which I think is very, very sweet. And here they are together in the 1921 census here. And what I find very interesting is that Edward's filled this out. He puts himself as the head in inverted commas. Lists himself as an author, but then when he puts George, he puts that George is his housekeeper. But yeah, I thought that was fascinating. I mean, he couldn't very well put, life partner or anything like that, could he? But yeah, I found that absolutely fascinating. So there we go. Just a very, very small handful of some stories that are represented in our family history records. And I've only used the 1921 census here as well. I've not even touched on things like newspapers or wills or other census records. And remember that these are just a small few that we know about, because of what I mentioned earlier around suspicion and fear and derision and even the law. We may not ever know if some of these people represented in these records were gay or lesbian or bisexual and so on. There will be many more out there, and I'm hoping that we can find out more about them at some point and celebrate them. So there we go. I think that's everything I wanted to touch upon today, but I've noticed that you guys are already commenting about some other little bits of, I've just noticed I'm intrigued by the picture of Edward and George. It looks like there's an extra hand on the left. Let me go back. Go back. Oh, it does. How bizarre is that? Maybe there was somebody else in the photograph and it's been cropped just to include them, perhaps. I think that's probably the most likely. Yeah, it looks like there's somebody else next to them. Either that or there's somebody poking a hand through the leaves behind them. I don't know. Yeah, I hadn't even noticed that. Okay, let's read what you guys are saying. Kim says, the earliest possible gay relationship I found in my tree was for my 8th great-grandfather's second cousin, William Sancroft. When he was at Emmanuel College in Cambridge, he wrote of the love of his dear Arthur Bowness, who tragically died. They had exchanged several intimate letters before Arthur's death in 1642. Sad. Yes, I can also see a couple more comments here. Andrew says, I have a cousin who was probably gay. He married but had no kids, and in 1855 went to Australia and made a living teaching dancing. His wife then had 3 kids with somebody else. Oh, there you go. Yes, and just going back to the brick wall a moment. Matthew says Dorothy M. Barnes, born Camberwell. 1893, mother's maiden name Cottle, so that's one to have a look at. Karen says, found a marriage for an Ellen Louisa Copley to Charles George Barnes in 1889 in Fulham. Maybe this could be Dorothy's parents. Yeah, that's another line we can follow. Yeah, this is a really valid point, Matthew. Barnes could have been misheard and written as Burns. There could be a number of different interpretations there. And in fact, when I've been looking for this family, I have had the name variants ticked on with every single search, just in case. In fact, sometimes in instances like this, when I think the surname could actually be different to what they've told us, I will search with no surname and try and add in some more detail. So, for example, I've been searching for Charles George, probably born, I've done a wide birth year estimate. I put in commercial traveller just in case that bit's correct, and then put London. But then I've also searched by taking out London, because with somebody like a commercial traveller, chances are they were not from London or moved around. So it's important in that instance, when you've got that sort of occupation, not to restrict your search to a specific area. Or at least you can, but don't just do that. Dorothy May Copley, mother's maiden name at marriage, see before, maiden name was Lusty. That's a great surname. Beth Ann, you've left us one. Oh, do we think we should do this one next time? Oh, it's a Welsh one. I love a Welsh one. Well, I think you got in there first, so I think that's the one we have to do next time. And if we like this, I might actually pass this to Liam, because Liam's going to be doing Fridays Live next week, and maybe he and all of you can tackle this one. So there we go. Yeah, I think we'll probably end it there today. Thank you much, everybody, for joining us. As usual, it's been an absolute pleasure. I love this time of the week. I love being able to do this. I can't think of many other jobs where I'd be able to do this. So thank you very much. Thank you for taking part in the Brick Wall crowdsourcing, as I am tentatively calling it. And yeah, I hope you enjoy exploring the new records over the weekend. Look after yourselves. Do something that makes you happy over the weekend, because it's a weekend. And enjoy the nice weather if you've got it. And we will see you here, same time next week, same time, same back channel. This is what my colleague Aoife sometimes says about a particular regular meeting. But yes, let your husband in now. Yeah, I'll go and let him in. I feel so bad. But I couldn't leave you guys hanging, so we'll leave it there. Take care of yourselves, everybody, and we'll see you.